do want to thank Josiah for his vigorous reading of the long gospel text today. You did very, very well, Josiah. I don't know if I've ever heard that long reading spoken in a more inspiring way. Well, John, the fourth gospel, is not my favorite gospel, as maybe some of you know. It's my very least favorite of the four, because it's the least historical, much less historical than the other three. It really is not trustworthy on the whole as history. But this story that we have read this evening by Josiah is probably one of the most historical. It's certainly my favorite part of John, and there must have been some factual basis, or it would not have been included. It would not have been preserved. It is so unexpected, really so shocking in many ways. And the most shocking fact, which may seem a little odd to us, but it's the fact that Jesus spoke in public to a woman on his own initiative. Male Jews were not supposed to do that in public. Women were to be dealt with very privately as really the property of men, and you didn't talk with them in public, or it would have been regarded as indecent. But Jesus comes right up to her and asks her for a drink and talks with her. When his disciples came back, because he had been alone, they were shocked to see him talking to a woman, any woman, because it just wasn't supposed to be done, and especially for someone who is being presented as a leader, a rabbi of Jews. Well, Jesus in the Gospels often treated women as equals. For you notice he does talk with her as if it's worthwhile talking with her, and takes her seriously at her level. And he often does this in other encounters in a way that, while it's not exactly feminist, it was not what he was supposed to do. He was violating the tradition, and quite obviously deliberately doing so. He knew very well, or had to be very well aware what he was doing. Scholars feel that there's no question that he had women disciples with the men, and that there were women at the Last Supper and other events. And in the early church, in the first few decades, there were women clergy, priest equivalents, and other very prominent women carrying over Jesus' immediate influence. But that faded away after some decades as the traditional patriarchy of Palestine and Rome took over. Women were suppressed, and in the gospel, affirming of women is erased or made much less. And so we don't get a real feeling for just what Jesus did do with women. This is a wrong, because as we know, so many church groups say, well, we can't have women clergy or women equality because Jesus was very male-centered. That's not true. There is an interesting little book that came out in 2014 by former President Jimmy Carter, who has been called the most effective ex-president we ever had, even though he had real trouble while he was president. It's a call to action: women, religion, violence, and power. And the whole theme of this book is what has been done to women, particularly by religions. And he's very, very blunt, scathingly blunt about Christianity and what it has done to women. He said, as a Southern Baptist, when he grew up, he was taught to think of women as really not very important, and certainly not equal to men. And he has grown out of that, and he feels the church needs to grow out of it and needs to repent for what it has done to women. It's not the only religious group that needs to do that. Muslims and Jews and many others, but Christianity really, really does have to do that, or should do that. And to some degree, it is doing that, a little bit, but still has a long way to go. It's almost humorous that Jesus would be imagined as suppressing women, because that's so definitely not Jesus. But in so many ways, Jesus was replaced later by various Christ figures, and they generally were women suppressing. But it wrongs him to blame him for the church's suppression of women. He had nothing to do with it, and is not pleased that it still is so entrenched. Well, a second shocking fact is that Jesus accepted this Samaritan woman, and also because she had such a scandalous past. 5 husbands, presumably in divorce, and then the man she was living with was not her husband. She had not a good personal reputation. She was someone he should not have paid any attention to. He should have just ignored her, but he does not. He does engage her in a compassionate and sensitive way. And then goes and preaches to Samaritans, works among them for 2 days. And we today can hardly imagine how Jews and Samaritans were so antagonistic to each other. It would be like a white pastor going down in Martin Luther King Jr. days into the South and being very equal, taking blacks freely as equals. That would not go so well with white supremacists. And Jesus did this almost constantly. He was always accepting people he was not supposed to accept. Tax collectors, these collaborators with Rome, he should have definitely had nothing to do with them. Sinners, which means people who do not keep the law the way they were supposed to. Often they couldn't because of their jobs or whatever they were doing. Lepers, prostitutes, the poor, even Romans. It's hard to imagine whom he would not have accepted except people who were very convinced of their superiority and lorded it over the people. But his acceptance was not good PR for someone who was trying to be a leader, because it made him so controversial with the powers that be, with the respectable upper crust people that he needed to win over, presumably. But again, it's just dramatic. He had to be deliberately accepted the unacceptable, violated the restrictions that he was supposed to have obeyed and upheld. Well, the church should, following him, do the same thing, and has had very great difficulty doing that. I think we are most aware that they have not accepted LGBTQ people very generously. It's more so now than it used to be, but still far from always warm. And it is really difficult to imagine Jesus rejecting LGBTQ people. It would be so uncharacteristic of him when he accepted everyone else he was not supposed to accept, and did so quite freely. it's clear that Jesus' heart was very big, and he believed God's heart was very big. And so he calls on us to expand our hearts. One thing that I have said in sermons, which I think has been more controversial than anything else, and I have said this on a number of occasions, even here, that I visualize God as accepting not just Christians in our life to come, but Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and all kinds of people, even atheists, or perhaps better to say non-theists, people who do not have a view of God as a super person, which is a better term. And I personally think that many of these people are sometimes more Jesus-like than many Christians. Or even Christians among themselves often are very bitter and attacking one another in a way that is not like Jesus. But I do believe that God is just infinitely more ecumenical than we are, or that we can even imagine. And we do need to expand our hearts and to challenge one another in our society to expand our hearts radically. For certainly he was radical. The Gospels on occasion toned down him a bit, but the radicalness does come through. Well, the third point is that Jesus is not at all afraid to be controversial, as we see in this. He quite openly talks with her and accepts her and talks with the other Samaritans and knows that this is very, very controversial. He isn't supposed to do that. It's going to make him even more controversial than he was already. And he wants us to not be afraid to be controversial. But the church on the whole has been very afraid to do that. And very careful, very cautious. And right now we have to be aware of the Trump era and of our current administration doing many things that really are so lacking in compassion and sensitivity that there is a real question of how Jesus would respond. At least some people think that he'd be. The pastor of my Lutheran church that I go to in the morning said recently that she had been asked by people how Jesus would view some of the actions of the administration, particularly with Muslims and immigrants and the wall and so forth. And the people who ask this are definitely Trump people, and she does not know how to respond in a pastorally sensitive way. She says recently she tried her best to respond kindly to a woman, and yet not misrepresent Jesus, but the woman was very upset and very offended. And the pastor did not wish to be. Well, I can understand her position. After all, the congregation could fire her. I don't think they will. She's very much loved. But if someone asked me, how do I think Jesus would feel about what the administration is doing? Well, I would try to understand the questioner's anger and pain and whatever caused them to challenge me in that way. But I wouldn't have to say that I do believe Jesus would have real problems. He would not like the wall. He would not like blocking Muslims, and is not Islamophobic. He would be very sensitive to immigrants, to Mexicans, and would not like what is being done to them in cutting medical assistance, even Meals on Wheels. The idea of eliminating that and essentially gutting Social Security and many other such policies that are so hurtful to the poor and to the neediest, with all the big concern about money. Well, we know how Jesus talked about money, that he did not think much of it. If mammon is your God, you are in trouble. He was in no way money-oriented. And so I would feel I'd have to say this no matter what happened to me. And I think we have no choice but to be controversial. We have no choice but to say that this vision is not Jesus' vision. Some people feel that it is, but they have invented all kinds of Christ figures that do all sorts of things, that even praise lasting LGBTQ people. It's not easy to do this. It is risky, but Jesus knows that. He went so far as that he eventually was put to death for being so controversial. We don't all want to do that, to die, but we really have to not be afraid to be controversial. So the fact that Jesus accepted a woman when he wasn't supposed to is something that the church needs to do more than it usually has. The fact that Jesus constantly accepted all kinds of people he shouldn't have, we ought to do. And we must not be afraid to be controversial. I do want to read again the last verse of the hymn we've just sung, which is an amazing hymn. It seems so almost vain and bold, but I think it's something we need to listen to. Are ye able, still the Savior whispers down eternity, and heroic spirits answer now as then in Galilee, Christ, we are able. Our spirits are thine. Remold them, make us like thee, divine. Thy guiding radiance above us shall be a beacon to God, to love and loyalty.